Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. Hi, welcome to a new episode of We Get It. My name is Karine Chalifour. I'm the Program Director with Young Adult Cancer Canada. Thank you for joining us for this new episode. This season, we've actually changed things up a little bit, as you will notice. We will bring you every week, every Monday night, 7 p.m., we will bring you sessions that we have recorded and edited from our past events, sessions that are with amazing health professionals and friends across the country, some stories from Yackers as well. And we will talk about issues that are, we know, real things and real issues for the young adults we work with, and for topics like fear of cancer recurrence, body image, movement and exercise, mindfulness, legacy, palliative care. We are going to touch on a bunch of content. So we hope that those sessions are going to provide you with information and tools to help you live life and love life, and hope you get to join us every week and share with anyone who could be interested. So let's start now with this next episode of We Get It. Enjoy.
So Greg Youden is longtime financial advisor at CIBC, and CIBC are a huge partner of YAC, and super grateful to have you join us this morning. And, you know, dating way back, Greg, to like 2007, when we did our first conference, we actually did polling with our survivors that were coming around some of the issues that they were dealing with. And throughout retreats, every single time we do a polling with them, we essentially do a voting system to ask them, what are the topics that are most important for them? And it was an interesting observation. We noticed that finances was never top 3, but it seemed to be like in every single survivor's top 5. It was like the most pressing things that they needed to talk about were probably slightly different and more intense, but almost everybody was dealing with some challenges as it related to finances. So we're really glad to have you take us through some slides around finances and how we can manage our money in these really uncertain times. So no more delay. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I really want to thank you, your entire team at YAC, to invite me here this morning. Have a conversation, have a discussion. As you mentioned, you know, finances is certainly always a top of mind topic for a lot of people. It is certainly something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, even though it's top of mind. So I'm, you know, hoping that you guys are going to get a lot out of this session today, but I'm also hoping that I get a lot out of this session today. So basically how I wanted to kind of look at this session, we got a really good PowerPoint presentation that's designed by CIBC, show some really good information that I think everyone's going to find useful. We also put out some questions earlier this week where we've got a lot of really good answers. And I want to thank everybody who took the time to answer these questions to help me prepare for this. What I want to do is kind of look at those questions or those and come up with a couple of common answers or a theme that I'm seeing in a lot of the questions and address them. But what I tell everybody when we talk about finances is that, you know, this is your time and this is your money. So it's a great time to ask the questions that you're always afraid to ask. I've always said, like, we were never ever taught anything about finances. Unless there's someone in your life who's taught you, whether it's a parent, a guardian, an uncle, or somebody or teacher who you kind of looked up or asked some questions. There's nothing really structured in the school program. There's some really good, I guess, exterior programs outside of the school curriculum that, you know, a lot of times are one-day events or little seminars and things like that. So there is some information out there. But unless we sit down and we're taught it, it's kind of just something that everyone assumes you're going to be able to handle it. And finances are one of the biggest things in life to handle. And if not taught properly, they can certainly get out of control. So what we'd like to do today is kind of go through a couple of slides just to have a focus, just so we can look at it, and then we'll have a continuing conversation. So I'm going to share a presentation that we put together. A bit of background, just to let you know, I've been with CIBC for 12 years, and I also spent 11 years with Royal Bank. So I've been doing financial planning for clients. I'm based in St. John's, but I do travel around the province of Newfoundland and Labrador talking to clients. So what I'm hoping to bring to this as well is some practical real life examples that I've lived through, that my clients have lived through, that I've seen, that hopefully you can relate to and take some information away. We call this navigating your finances in a cashless world. And there's two components of this that I felt is really applicable. One would be the changing world that we live in with our finances, how we use our money. But the second piece, I think, is, and the reason why I chose this presentation is in response to what a lot of people have talked about, is the budgeting side of life. And that's really what we're going to focus on those two. So quick agenda, looking at our current cashless world and where we're moving compared to where we've been. How can we manage our money in this cashless world? How to protect yourself from your money, how to protect your money, how to keep your information safe. So there's a lot of good information there. Some resources I'll share with you. So if you look at this real quickly, 57% right now of transactions in Canada are cashless. If you look at the rest of the world, we're right up there with the majority of other countries. So it's certainly something that we're seeing a huge trend. As I mentioned, 23 years in the banking industry. I remember a time when you'd line up on a Friday afternoon to cash a paycheck or to cash a check to get physical money that you would need, and that's all you had to spend for that weekend. Now, that same check, you can take a picture with your phone and it's automatically deposited into your bank account. So things are changing. Cashless payments, what are cashless payments? Where you use your debit card, where you use your credit card for online purchases, and also where you're using your phone. So Apple wallets, different institutions have their own wallets where you can, pay with your phone. So this is what the cashless payments look like. Pros and cons of going cashless. Obviously, when you have cashless, it's convenient. You don't need to have money on you. If you got a bank card, you tap into it, it's convenient, it's there. There's a lot of really good loyalty programs out there that you can accumulate rewards, you can accumulate points, frequent flyer things, frequent purchases, all these type of things help with regards to using cashless payments. Transactions are recorded. So if you want to look at the end of the month and say, okay, where did I spend my money? Or I want to just double check to make sure that my purchases are correct, you can look at them through things like your online banking and stuff like that. Cards are recoverable. So if, for example, you lose a Visa card or even you lose your bank card, it's so much easier to cancel that card right away and get a new one issued. There's no week delay, 2-week delay. Things are so much more faster. International payments, money can be transferred to friends, colleagues around the world so much easier than what used to have to be done before. Obviously, that's the pros that we're looking at. The cons associated with going cashless is overspending. There's really no budget. There's no $20 in your pocket, and that's all you have to spend for today. If you have access to the debit card or your credit card, your overspending temptation is certainly there. To go along with that are associated fees that could increase your banking fees, your monthly fees, the cost of interest that's being charged on credit cards. We always think, okay, I'll pay for that later, but when does later come? And then how much interest is being charged? We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. The technology that obviously is so beneficial when we have cashless payments can also be a detriment, just like technology in every other part of our life, is that if technology is down and we want to pay for something, we may not be able to. Privacy and security are huge because of online hackers, online access to accounts. Things are available. There's some, privacy from a tracking point of view. If you're making a lot of online purchases with a certain vendor, they can certainly track your spending habits, make suggestions to you, which, for some people, oh, that's great. Here's another suggestion of something else I should buy. But, how's that information being gathered? How's it being shared? And things like that. So to be aware of it, not saying, you shouldn't go out, but just to be aware of the cons associated with going cashless. How to manage your money in this cashless world. I'd also add to that this current environment that we're living in, and I would add to it our regular world. So how can we manage money on a regular basis? Tip number one is creating a budget. And as sometimes when we use the word budget, it seems so really constrained. And constrained means, oh my God, I'm only can spend so much money per month. You feel restrictive, lack of control, and things like that. So we like to use the word budget, but I also like to use the word cash flow. Cash flow helps track the money that's coming in, and it also helps track the money that's going out. Feels less restrictive when you use cash flow, but for some people, they need that restriction because the temptation to spend is always there. So if we have a budget, at least that's a great starting point to say, okay, this is the money that's coming in. These are my set expenses. So this is something that I think is extremely important for everybody, regardless of what walk of life you are, what age, where you are. I think this is important. I would also, discuss it almost like your financial, routine, your fitness, things like that. If we wake up every day and we think about, okay, what we need to eat, how healthy are we going to be? How much fruit and vegetables. We look at the Canada Food Guide. There's certain things that you have to have every day, and we're very diligent with regards to that. Let's kind of focus the same thing when it comes to creating a budget. So then we talk about, if you look over on this on the side, we're talking about the needs and the wants. And a lot of times these get muddy and they're very combined, right? But our needs are things that we need in order to stay alive. Our wants, is something that, we don't necessarily need, but we want, is that latest iPhone or things like that. So how do you define your personal needs and wants? What I always like to tell everybody is that this budget, this cash flow, this financial fitness, however you want to call it, this is you personally. Don't have to share it with anybody. It's not a test. You're not going to pass it or fail it if someone else looks at it, but this is how you create it for your own personal situation. Hence where we talk about this. This is very much a sample, but it does you do want to look at your personal spending, the essentials, and savings. These percentages are just a guideline that CIBC and we've come up with. I've seen a lot of people tweak these however that they want, but if they want 10% savings, 5% savings, if all that's that they can afford at that stage in their life, great, as long it's in the budget and it's a focus for them. We always know when we're learning something, when we're doing something, a lot of people like to write things down, and it makes you accountable. So you can go back and refer to it. So creating a budget, I always tell my clients, sit down on a Sunday afternoon, grab your favorite drink of choice, sit down with a pen and paper and say, how are things looking? What am I spending my money on? What am I overspending on? And once again, it becomes personalized to you. This is taken the previous slide, the 50, 30, 20, and expanding it to look at a planned budget on the left column or the first column, the actual, which is the middle column, and then any difference that you can look at that's happened during that particular month. And a lot of times, as I mentioned earlier, with our cashless society now, you can look at your online banking, and there's a really great snapshot that you can look at. How much did I spend on going out for meals? How much did I spend on regular groceries? How much did I spend on rent? How much did I spend on transportation? Most institutions have an online system that breaks all that down for you. So it's really, really easy to find. But what I also would recommend to people is take the last 30 days on your online banking, if that's something that you use, and look at it line by line. And you will be surprised as to how much you're spending on, you know, things like coffees and going out, and which is fine, but is it more than what you expected it to be? And normally when I ask our clients to do this, it's an eye-opening discussion, because they say, oh my God, I didn't realize I spent so much money on this. Because part of our discussion when we have is that people say, well, I can't find any more money. You're telling me I need to save, or I need to pay down my debt, or I need to do something different, but I can't find any more money. Where's this more money coming from? When we do our review of the budget and we say, oh, okay, well, I spent a little bit too much on, you know, dining out as an example, well, then is that something that we can change? So this is really nice. It's a very simple guideline to look at your plan, your actual, your difference, and then you can just write up a little summary. And if there are things that you've done, what I always tell people too is reward yourself. If you had a goal that you wanted to reduce your expenses on a particular item or something, or if your goal was to save a little bit more money over the next couple of months and you achieve that, why not reward yourself? It's like everything else. If we're dieting, we're trying to change our eating habits, you go 6 days and then the 7th day is your cheat day, right? It's kind of the same thing with your finances. So there's nothing wrong with that. But what I like about a budget, it gets you into the habit of taking control of finances, because too many people tell me they don't have control. So this is where staying on top of your budget comes from, and this is your control. Compare your results with your estimates. So don't overlook, you know, these one-time expenses. It's $2 for a coffee here, $4, you know, for a coffee there, or whatever. All these little different things, along with number 3, where your small expenses all add up. If you do have online banking, use the apps that are available with it. If you don't use it and you still have a paper statement, sit down and go through that. Smart tips: avoid impulse buying. That's getting back to how do we use our money? Are we using credit cards on a regular basis, which are fine, nothing against them, but does that create the impulse buying because we know we have room on this credit card to go ahead and make that impulse buying? Shop around. So instead of doing the impulse buying on whatever item you're going to buy, or if there's an item on your list that you have to buy, let's see if you can shop around and find it cheaper somewhere else. Student discounts or any other discounts that are available. I also go back to the frequent flyer, the rewards programs, the points programs. A lot of these that if you do use their services, there are other discounts that you can receive. So it's not just student discounts, there's a lot of other discounts that are out there as well. I really like the quote on the bottom from Will Smith that says, too many people spend money that they haven't earned to buy things that they don't want to impress people they don't like. So stop and think about that one for a second. So get advice on budgeting. Financial mentor. Keep in mind, this financial mentor has to be somebody who is good with their money. Not just because They may look like they're good with their money. We need you to make sure that they are. Someone could look financially great, and then you ask them the first question, how do you manage your budget? And the person says, budget? What budget? What are you talking about? I don't have a budget. I just spend and I have everything that I have here. So it doesn't mean that they're a good financial mentor for you. Ask them, what techniques have they used in the past to help reduce their expenses? What have they used? And we learn from others. So if there is someone who's doing something that you want to emulate, let's ask them, okay, what is it that you're doing? And can I try to start doing that? And do you have any financial advice for me? There's going to be a lot of people who will give you all kinds of financial advice. And like anything else, you kind of pick through it and figure out what's most applicable for you. I'm just going to jump in here for a second. I know one of the questions or one of the answers that was given to me was, who can they ask at a bank, or who can they, get information from? And this is just me in my banking world. It's only because I know this world. There are a lot of people in the banking system or financial institution, credit unions, financial advisors, who would be more than happy to help you with this. Because financial advisors would prefer to see someone successful than to see someone struggling. It would make everyone's job that much easier. So if you ask a financial advisor for some advice, they probably have some really good tools. They have some, really good advice, some things that they can share with you. And that's what they're there for. Look for accreditations and look to see what type of professional education do they have. Look for their experience, or ask them for some references. Ask them for some other clients that are open to discussing their advice and their service, and say, okay, did this financial advisor give you the advice that you're looking for? There's no harm in asking for references if you want to sit down and talk to a financial advisor. A lot of them, if they're working in financial institutions, there's no additional cost to sit down with these people. The cost is your time, but I think if you get anything out of this session, if you get anything out of a session with sitting down with a financial advisor, if you get one thing out of it, I've always said at least you're learning something, you've done something different, you've got a new habit that you want to try. Ask for, and I don't want people to feel that they're going to be judged because you're not going to be judged, but maybe you've had an experience in a bank or a financial institution where you might have been turned down for a loan, and it's certainly left a sour taste in your mouth, and you're like, I don't want to go back there. But there's a lot of institutions out there. There's a lot of financial institutions out there, or financial advisors. So if there's one that you particularly don't like, you can certainly shop around. But certainly don't be afraid to ask, and really have an open discussion, because the more a financial advisor knows about your personal situation, as challenging as it is to sometimes to share personal information, the advice they give can be that much more personalized and not as generic. So then you feel someone is listening to you and they're coming back with the answers that you need. Because sometimes someone might get declined for a loan based on financial numbers, things don't look good, they got a bad credit score, whatever. But if we don't know where that bad credit score came from, let's have the discussion. Let's share as much as you're comfortable sharing with that financial advisor. Because that financial advisor typically is the one person who's going to try to get maybe that loan or that credit card or that mortgage approved for you. They want to be able to back it with a discussion with whoever's providing that, to say, yeah, I'm going to vouch for this person because they're in a financial situation that happened 3 years ago, but they've really cleaned up their act in the last 3 years. So that's why I think if we have the discussion with financial advisors, people ask me all the time, what does the banking world look like? Is there going to be need for financial advisors in 5 and 10 years when we have everything online and you can apply for a loan and you can get a mortgage and you can invest all online? I still fully believe the discussion of advice is still very much important to have with a financial advisor. Everything else can be transactional, and transactional can happen online, can happen on an app. You can do all these things, but to sit down and have that financial discussion, and it's advice, it's eye-opening, and I think it helps both people with regards to that.
Greg, practical question is, do you have a Excel sheet or some kind of actual form that is a template people can use for budgeting?
Yes.
You had a slide a couple of back that was basically looked like it was almost pulled out of Excel. So
Yep.
Exactly, yeah. Like, do you have something like that that people can start with that we can share?
Yep. So if I just quickly jump to right here where it says create your budget using the CIBC student budget calculator. A budget calculator can be for anybody.
Yep.
You'll see this particular link is, for the student population, but under CIBC website. And Jeff, I can share any links that we use. I can share this particular slideshow with you, so then people can kind of create their own. I'm not here to promote just CIBC. Every financial institution has it. Of course, I work with CIBC, and we love doing all the work that we do with YAC. But you have other resources as well. One that I use a lot, believe it or not, is a Government of Canada website. And that's gov.gc.ca. And what that allows, and I will kind of reference this a little bit later on, but it does have a budget calculator in there as well. So it's not a financial institution budget calculator, right? Because some people feel, oh my God, I got to do whatever the bank tells me to do, things like that. So the Government of Canada website has a lot of really good resources on budgeting. There's one there all about budgeting during COVID-19. Really applicable, useful information.
A question around high interest savings accounts and how sometimes they maybe require a 1, 3, or 5 year window. Is that something that survivors who may have a more uncertain road ahead should be looking at, or are there other ways that they can look at some of that stuff?
High interest savings accounts typically don't have a time frame. Some of them do have a minimum balance. And sometimes the minimum balances are quite high. They could be $3,000, could be $5,000 to enter. You still have the account, but the higher interest is not applicable to you certain cross these thresholds. But a lot of especially during COVID-19 right now, a lot of the financial institutions have removed the minimum thresholds. So it allows everyone to get a higher interest savings account without having to have a pile of money sitting in the bank account. What I do like about most high interest savings accounts is that they're accessible. There's no time frame for the majority of them where you got to be locked in for a year or 3. If you have a shorter time frame, or if you need accessibility, you can access it. I will also put a little asterisk next to it that I know one with CIBC, a high interest savings account, literally is an electronic account that you should only access online, because if you use it as a debit and you use it with your debit card, there's huge fees that goes along with it. But you could transfer between that high savings to a checking account without incurring any fees. And that's a huge thing for me and for everybody I talk to, is that in this world, we want to reduce our fees. And you're probably seeing it with a lot of the financial institutions, is that, for years, huge amounts of fees, but we've listened to the clients. We realize that you have choices, that there's different options. So a lot of them are coming down with, low fee options or no fee options. So Jeff, to answer that question, that is one way that people can save. Another way too that a lot of people have been saving is through a tax-free savings account. So I just want to take a few minutes and explain that, because there are some confusion around the benefits or the ins and outs of a tax-free savings account. So let me tell you what I tell everyone I talk to. A tax-free savings account has the worst name, because It says tax-free savings account, and everybody thinks it's like a savings account that you have at a bank, checking or savings. It really should be called a tax-free investment account because it's not just a savings account. You can have it invested in all kinds of different things. You can have a high interest savings account inside it. You can have guaranteed investment certificates, different types of bonds, mutual funds, stocks. And what this allows you to do is to have an account, an investment account that's accessible, but you'll never pay any type of income on it. So income tax, it's fully tax-free. If it grows in value and cash it in, you don't pay any income tax. If you earn interest on it and it grows, you don't pay any income tax. So the first part of the name is fantastic, tax-free. But savings account, don't just think it's just a savings account. So for anybody who has the want, the desire, the need to invest a little bit differently outside of a traditional savings account, these tax-free savings accounts are available. You do not need to have an income to open up a tax-free savings account. Unlike an RRSP plan, which has a lot of benefits as well, a tax-free kind of works the opposite. You don't have to have any income to open one. There are annual limits like everything else, and it's all based on everyone being the age of majority. So you only need to be the age of majority in your province. And if you want to, there's no minimum to have a tax-free savings account. There are annual maximums that you're allowed to invest. So that may have helped answer that question. I may have gone a little bit more, but it's certainly something that's extremely important. And I think it's extremely relevant for anybody who's looking for any other type of savings options besides your traditional savings and checking accounts.
Well, Jeff just had to step out for a minute. So the tax-free savings account, you kind of referred and compared to RSPs, let's say. If you need to take money out of that, how does that process? Is that easy? Because we know that a lot of our community members sometimes are just stuck with something pretty sudden. How does that work?
Yeah, so tax-free savings account, because it's an investment account, you can access your money at any time. Inside it, if you chose an investment like a guaranteed investment certificate, which has a specified time period, 1 year, 3 years, maybe 5 years, you still have to, you're bound by the terms of that particular agreement of whatever the investment that you choose inside. But if there are available investments, and the majority of them would be inside a tax-free savings, typically you can get your money within 24 to 48 hours. So if something urgent happens and you have the availability in a tax-free, you contact your provider, they cash it in for whatever portion you need, it goes back into your bank account, and as I mentioned, you pay zero income tax. So a lot of the clients that I talk to are in an environment where they may be receiving disability payments, they may be receiving other payments that are income tested. So they don't want to have an increase in any capacity to their income because they could lose other government benefits. So if you have the ability to have a savings account, a tax-free savings account will allow you to achieve that and never impact your income taxes, so it doesn't impact those particular government benefits. Does that help?
Great.
Okay. So just to kind of look at this tip number 2 on your budgeting, simplify payment methods. Because we do see, I always ask people, pull out your wallet and let me know how many cards you got in your wallet. And sometimes there's too many. And now, on our phone, we can have all kinds of apps where you can have access to all these programs. So if you've got a multitude of credit cards, if you've got a multitude of bank accounts and things like that, try to simplify them, because that once again gives you control and focus on your spending behaviors, and align yourself with the loyalty programs that make sense to you. Don't just sign up for them because you're getting something free, whatever. make sure that they're the right loyalty program for you. There are a lot of loyalty programs. There's a lot of credit cards out there now. I can't even remember. People keep asking me, but there's between 20 and 30 at CIBC alone of credit cards. So there should be one that matches who you are, your spending habits, your goals, the rewards that you want, the fees that you want to pay, and the interest that you want to pay. So I'll just jump in here now and talk about the costs of some of these, because the interest rates on credit cards are the worst interest rates that are out there. We do fully recognize that sometimes there's a need to put a purchase on a credit card because it's your only resource. It's the last resource you have. I fully appreciate it, but they're there for convenience. But keep in mind, some of them are as high as 19.99%. Some retail or department store or in-house credit cards could be as high as 29.99%. So if you're going to have a credit card, try to find ones that have low interest rates. And there's a lot out there now that can be as low as 10%, 11%. There's a lot in the marketplace out there for sure. And there's a lot of credit card companies now that offer a prepayment or a payment schedule plan that if you do happen to make a big purchase or an unexpected purchase, or typically what I see is big purchases, appliances, furniture, things like that, and you can't pay it off the next month and you're concerned about this 19.99%, a lot of credit cards allow you to pay it out over a period of time, 5 months, 6 months, and things like that. So it allows you to have a lower interest rate and pay it down more at your leisure. There are credit cards that have no fees. So you're having access to credit, which is great. And some of them have reward programs. Some of them have cashback programs where you can get 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. At the end of the year, you get a cash deposit into your credit card that you can use and that you never ever did pay an annual fee. So keep your eye on the small print, and whoever's offering that said credit card for you, challenge them, ask them the questions. Guys, what's my annual fee that I'm going to charge? If I add a co-borrower or my spouse, is there an additional fee? What happens if I don't pay in the first 21 days? What happens if I don't pay in the first 30 days, 2 months? What type of interest will be accumulating? Is there a fee to withdraw cash if there's an emergency out of a bank machine and I need to use my credit card? Once again, we need to take control. And I tell people that if this is something that you're using, ask all those questions. And if the person who's offering to you don't know the answers, well, I think you should move on to someone who does, because this is your money. You got to be in control, and every cent impacts things. And what I see with a lot of clients, when they do fall into some financial challenges, it's a compounding effect, because their ability to borrow could get worse because of poor credit scores and things like that. And then they're borrowing more and more at higher interest rates, and it's a very bad snowball effect. So the more that you can reduce those interest costs, you're still going to have debt. We all need debt to live off of. But if you can manage it and try to get lower interest rates, that's certainly something that you can certainly look out. And it goes back to, shopping around. When you buy something, shop around when you get a service like a credit card. Also, too, some institutions will offer things like a line of credit. And with a line of credit, it's typically a lower interest rate than credit cards and other loans. So what some people can do is that if they can't pay off their credit card, they may use a credit line with a lower interest rate to pay down that credit card and then pick away at the credit line. So it's another option within borrowing, but it's certainly, you don't want to have it in addition, right? Because now you got two sources of debt that you're looking at for sure. Easy thing, don't exceed your limit and keep an eye on your statements. This is interesting because it talks about a cash-only diet in a cashless world, but if you have trouble budgeting, sometimes if you have those mason jars lined up and say, I can only spend so much money on coffee this month, it's in that and that's all you can spend. So that's an option for a lot of people. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because I want to get to the questions, but just be extremely aware of fraud, identity theft, and your privacy. If something comes through online to you via text, email, if it's too good to be true, obviously that's a normal rule of thumb. But if you're concerned, pick up the phone and contact your financial institution and say, "Did you just send me this email?" So be very aware of anything that's coming to you, because you should be directing what it is that you want. So if it's coming to you, that's a red flag there. Identity theft, it's, for the most part, make sure you have very strong passwords. Try not to keep yourself logged in to these online banking apps and things like that. Change your password frequently. Just be very, very much aware of what's happening around you. And that's the tools.
I got a collection of questions, and then you have, I know, the questions that we asked before. So let's make sure we get time for those. I know there's a question, a simple one about the budgets that you had around the 50, 30, 20%. Are you talking the gross income or are you talking after tax? So net income that comes into your bank account, just for clarity, I think we're looking on that one.
Yeah, I like net income. I've seen budgets that handle both. Really, your net income is what you spend.
Exactly right. So whatever actually gets dropped in your bank account weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, however you get your income comes in, you multiply that out across the year, and then that's your total annual income. And then you can work from that line, and then you can apply some of those percentages that Greg and Cibc have suggested. I know that's just a guide. Everybody's in a different scenario, but it's helpful to have a guide just to get your head around at the start. A question about RSPs and TFSAs. I don't know if this is a specific provincial issue, but a question around the value of those impacting on disability payments. Do you know anything about that you can speak to? I don't know much about that scenario at all. I think perhaps sometimes for disability and other kinds of payments, they do a financial assessment. So of course, if you've got investments, whether it's ones that you saved or sometimes it's passed down from parents or something, that can really impact your assessment.
So what I can tell you is, I guess, general information, but RSPs and tax-free savings accounts are assets that you own, okay? And they don't generate income until you actually withdraw from it, because a lot of disability tax credits and things are looking at income that you have, right? Because they need to supplement your income with a disability tax credit or whatever, disability payments and things like that. If you do a withdrawal from an RRSP plan, it's going to be considered taxable income. It's the same as if you had an earned income, so it's taxable. So that could negatively impact you if you did a withdrawal from an RSP. If you did the same withdrawal from a tax-free savings account, zero impact to your taxes, zero impact to your disability tax credit. So that's why I kind of look at it from two different options. A tax-free savings account is always going to be what I would say your main savings account for additional investments, for additional savings, things like that. The RSP we know is a retirement savings plan. What I would recommend people is that have the bulk of their money in their tax-free savings. When they want to move some of that to their RSPs, they could do it at their own choice. It's not a forced savings plan, so that way it gets back into control. And then if you need access to money, if there's an emergency, if you just want it, you got the money in the tax-free and it doesn't impact your taxes. If at the end of the year you figure out, oh my God, I should put some into my RSP, well then you take it from your tax-free and then move it to your RSP. If you personally have set up a monthly savings plan and you have it directed to your RSP, it's hard to unwind that, right? Because you can stop it, but once you've got an accumulation of money and you start withdrawing from it, then it impacts your income, with the exception of the home buyer's plan. And I can spend a few minutes on that if you like.
So Greg, just for clarity, I get totally, I think obviously there's a lot of programs. I know housing programs and disability income and other kinds of benefits. Some of it is based on your income.
Yep.
It seems like perhaps there's another group where it's based on your assets.
Okay.
Do you know the difference, or is there a standard? I mean, it's not, we can't speak in specifics on this stuff because every program can be slightly different, but I hear what you're saying in that, if you've got assets and the kind of program you're applying for assesses your income, then, the less you can draw down on those assets, the stronger your application is going to be with assessing your income. But when you do draw down on them, of course, they're going to qualify as income.
Yeah, so I can't speak to specifics, but I do know that generally most of the programs out there are moving to income-based tests. If there's some asset tests, it doesn't matter if you have a tax-free or an RSP, it's still an asset you own. So that's why, I would still lean towards a tax-free if you had some money to have in a savings account. Yeah, because you don't, I don't know. That's a hard one to answer, Jeff. I can see if I can find that answer for you. I do know if you had one or the other, if that's all you had as a choice of one or the other, that's something that could impact your income, choose a tax-free at this moment.
Yeah, I got it. One other point around high interest GICs. Is that, to me, again, I know it's custom to everyone, but as a general rule, is that the kind of savings tool that you would recommend? Or are there other options that people should think about?
So easy answer is that other options should be out there. What a high interest GIC, there's pros and cons like everything. So high interest GIC right now, to be brutally honest with you, is hard to find. Most GICs are extremely low interest rates because lending has a low interest rate. They're all correlated. But a GIC is a time commitment, a year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. There are short-term ones. So if you had a goal and your goal was, I need this money in 5 years' time and I don't want to have access to it, a 5-year GIC, and I don't want it to fluctuate with the markets, I don't want to risk this money, a 5-year GIC could be a great option. But I think in the world of investing, there's so much more other options that can be different than a GIC, but they can also complement a GIC. So a lot of times you're not going to have a one solution for your savings and just buy a 5-year GIC and that's all you have. That'll be your longer term or medium term, I guess, 5 years. You can have more shorter term goals. So to easy answer your question, a 5-year GIC, I think in my experience, I don't see them very often these days. There's a lot more other options that give you more flexibility, more opportunity to earn more in this particular world.
Yeah, because the interest rates are so low as well on top of that now.
I don't even think you can get one for 3% today. And GICs are still there, and they're there for the right reasons, as I just described. But if inflation, which is our cost of living, and we know it doesn't matter what province in Canada you're living in, next year it's going to be more expensive than this year. That's our cost of living. Your money needs to keep up with inflation. And a lot of times inflation can run 2, 3, or more %. Right now, it's less than 1 because of the environment that we're living in. But pockets of inflation, for example, groceries, are probably growing at more than 3 or 5 or even 7% year over year. Yep. So if you're investing your money in something that's getting you 3%, your money is not keeping up with inflation.
Yeah, I know. I've got a comment about RBC offering one that's got 15%. I'm not sure what's involved with that. That is a really, really strong return. So if there is a product out there like that that's got a really high return, then obviously people should have a look at that. But most of the time, because YAC does this too, and when we keep track of this stuff, just looking at what's available, and it's oftentimes it's in the 1% range or less. So sometimes you're even down in the less.
There are relatively new products in GICs where the interest can be linked to market performance, stock market performance, and particular investment performance. And they could use words like 15% would be the cap. So sometimes it'll grow your principal is still 100% protected, which is what a lot of people need for peace of mind. But instead of a fixed interest rate, it could vary. It could be zero after a period of time, but it could get as high as 15%. And that little asterisk is there saying, if market performance is strong, you'll get 15% without risking your principal. So always look at that fine print and take it to a second person for their opinion. Just say, look, this is what I just saw. Pick it apart. Does it make sense? Help me understand it. But there's so many different options out there now for GICs.
Yeah, I get it too. A couple of great comments, Gerald. Good work on the market rate. Just exactly what you're saying. The detail, the fine print on these things is so tricky. Not being a fine print guy, it's super draining and intense, I find, to get into that stuff. Now it's so common, obviously, to be able to buy groceries and a lot of things that you need online. It is a lot easier, I find, to track your expenses. A bunch of other comments in the chats about going to the grocery store with a fixed budget and then coming out having spent twice as much. Because the benefit of doing that activity online is it allows you to see exactly how much you're committing to before you hit send, versus being at the cash with a bucket load of groceries and then all of a sudden you're $150 into a commitment. So a practical tool, I think, that is super helpful. And so far anyway, I think the increase in groceries is paying for this, but there's no fees to buy your groceries from your local grocery store, generally, from what I've seen.
So for about 3 years now, I've been doing online shopping at our local grocery store and absolutely love it because there is no surprise. You know exactly what's going in your cart. It does a total for you on a regular basis. If you have any entrepreneurial people on this call, get someone to find an app that's going to let everyone at the grocery store scan the product as they put it into their cart and keep a running total in their shopping cart. If we can find some option to that, that would be great.
Yeah, if that's not out there, that's got to be done by tomorrow morning. Someone's got to be out there. That's a super helpful piece. But I know that the transition to the online is, especially in the last 2 months, has been skyrocketed. You can't even get a spot to go pick up your stuff half the time. The little things were the ones that we're probably doing on a daily or much more regular basis. So they just added up to be a huge part of the budget. It's so easy to spend $5 at a time. And it's so easy to do that 5 times a week without realizing just how much $25 a week can add up to be. And especially when you're doing that across a couple of different areas.
Jeff, can I share something with you on my screen? And this is perfect timing.
You're in control. Do it.
Thank you. So, and this was not, we're not prompted doing this in any capacity, right? Just watch this. This is a regular investment calculator that I share with all of our clients. So you said $25 a month or $25 a week.
Yep.
So I used $25 on a monthly basis. I did 15 years, and I said 5% rate of return. In a long-term investment, that's not unrealistic. It can be achievable. So it's not a GIC, but I just use it as an example. My experience has shown in my last 23 years, you can get 5% over a long time, okay? But that's my disclaimer. If you look at the monthly budget, if you invest and just save $25 over 15 years, you save $4,500, which turns into $6,600 when you do your savings. Now, if you do it on a bi-weekly basis, your $9,750 turns into $14,000. But Jeff, you just said $5 for 5 items a week, $25 a week. That turns into $28,000. So we think about what's going on with COVID right now, or anything that's happening in your life. When something in your life happens that you've lost control, it's great to have a little nest egg there that carries you to get back into a little bit more control, or help you, or even just meet one of your goals. So if we can find that $5 a day on a weekly basis, huge power of growth. If you can find it $5 or $25 a month, let's take this away today and say, okay, guys, let's challenge everybody in 6 months or in a year's time. How much did we save? and or even yourself. And if you did, reward yourself with the next little thing that you were, sacrificing not to buy. Go out and buy it with a little treat money for yourself, but still hold fast to your savings plan.
I think a lot of the little things like that are also things that you may be able to adjust to easier. It's a big adjustment if you're going to change, or maybe a big adjustment if you're changing from having a car to taking transit or riding a bike to work. Some people are totally into those changes, but they're more fundamental changes for a lot of people. But the daily smaller hits, as you've just shown us, can make a huge financial impact, and likely on a daily basis are not going to change our life a lot.
I think if I can contribute one piece is, so we've done the YAC Prime study and we've learned a lot about finances, and all of the information you're bringing forward, Greg, is great in the sense that sometimes what we have as a conversation is, I was mentioning in the chat, like there's this definitely a high level of stress sometimes related to money, understandably, and also a little bit of shame. So we had people who felt they didn't even go to have a conversation with a financial advisor to even look at things because it was like, I don't even want to know how bad it is. A lot of our people, even just getting the awareness, it's like food, becoming more aware of what we eat. Well, yeah, let's become more aware of how we spend, our relationship with money, and try, if we feel like we're being paralyzed by the stress of our finances, so that we do no action or that we spend emotionally because we're stressed out, to figure out ways to reduce that stress so we can actually see more clearly what solutions are, and then go meet people who can help us. So I feel like there's the emotional component attached to money, and then there's the very concrete spreadsheets budget attached to money. And I feel like those two, they have to live together, my friend. It's really hard to do one without the other, which is, let's connect with, okay, what is my relationship with money? And then, is it healthy? Is it good? And then from there, I can guarantee you're going to have a lot more clarity on some of the decisions that you can make moving forward. That's my 2 cents.
No, that's really good discussion for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, really good. Greg, just to revisit the disability income piece, I think what's happening is there is perhaps the income from the assets are being counted as income, whether it's been cashed out or not, or perhaps the growth. I'm not exactly sure on that detail, but are there assets that people, or investments that people can use that would not be considered, would be protected from that you know of?
Well, the tax-free savings account is protected because it doesn't matter if they take income from it, it's tax-free, so it should not be included in that investment discussion. But I just want to go back to one other thing that we just talked about, which is a 5-year GIC. So if, as an example, and I'm just picking this product, to show an example, and it's one that's a market-linked GIC, and I know some of your people, some of the people following here understand what that is. But these type of GICs pay interest and earnings at the 5-year mark, which means nothing is included in years 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you're at all concerned about having that income calculated, it cannot be calculated because you can't access it and it's not payable to year 5. So Jeff, that might be one way around it, because that income is forced for year 5, nothing for years 1 to 4. So it won't be included in your income. But I go back to the tax-free savings account. We're allowed to access it, and it doesn't change our T4s. It doesn't give us any tax slips, nothing. So it should not be calculated in the disability income. I would challenge that if that's the case. But other than that, any income that you earn is going to be taxable, with the exception of those two that I just referenced.
No sweat. So that, I think some of these specific details just need some more focused understanding of what the benefits are, the requirements are from these programs, because again, there's a lot of fine print on those too as well. We get it. No, I appreciate that. That's great. Did you want to dig into some of the questions that we had before that we asked, and we had a whole bunch of responses. I know that from before. We sent around some questions just to get a feel for where people were.
Yeah, so the first question was, what keeps you up at night with regards to your finances? There's a lot of things that I think we've talked about: paying down debt. How can you save and pay down at the same time, or pay down debt? I didn't really address that one throughout the presentation, but I will say, as part of your budget, it's going to be there. It's a healthy balance where, yes, we want to pay down our debt, but try to get that $5 a week or $25 a month or whatever it is you can as part of your savings. So that's certainly something that someone asked, how do you do both? And I think a lot of it comes back to your control of your budget. There was a question there. The answer was lack of help from our financial institutions. So to what Corinne just said and what I said, ask for it. It's going to feel sometimes, it may feel uncomfortable, but I think the more of the discussion that's had, I think it'll be comfortable over time. We talked about the increasing cost of everything. So keep an eye on, inflation and what you're spending your money on. Sometimes, that's could grow too much in inflation. And then the other thing too, on the first question was which investments to choose. And I think we had a bit of a discussion with regards to the benefits of tax-free savings, RSPs, GICs, high interest savings accounts. I always tell people to match your investments with your goal. 3 things that you want to think about when you're choosing your investment is your appetite for risk, your time frame, and your accessibility. So if people are afraid to invest, there are so many options out there that there will be something that matches those 3 criteria for you, just so that you don't have the exact same investment as your colleague, your neighbor, or anything. Nobody needs to have the same investments. The second question, Jeff, that I put out there is that what would you do differently with your money? And this, there's a lot of things that came from that. One came through on a lot of people was not to rely on credit cards. Save. I did see one that said forced to stay in a full-time job to keep my health benefits. Now, I've done a lot of research on this, and obviously you do want to check with your own employer if you're working somewhere and you're concerned about your health benefits. Most now have a portability function that you can transfer to your own personal plan. Obviously, you continue to make the payments, but it's normally within a 30-day or 31-day window, So keep that in mind, that if you're planning on leaving a job and you're concerned about your health benefits, but you don't do anything for 2 months, you might be out of luck. Before you make that decision, check with your HR department, your human resources department, and say, if I were to leave, or, a lot of times, sorry, Jeff, is the fine print. You got to find that fine print that say, if I do leave, can I take these with me? Am I grandfathered in, continuing coverage, that kind of stuff. That is certainly something that's extremely important to a lot of people, is that you don't want to be trapped in a job because of benefits if you have the flexibility to take them personally. There was another question that was asked is, how can, if I do something differently, how can I have the ability to save for a house? Huge, right? Because right across Canada, prices of homes are changing. Some provinces are extremely high, some are coming down low. But we showed the savings calculator that if you can save, it will help over time. If you have an RRSP, and not everybody does, but if you happen to have one, and sometimes you have one through your employer, you can access that for a down payment on a home if you're considered a first-time home buyer, and it's not taxed as income, okay? And there's no taxes withheld. So it is the one benefit that you can use in a short term of an RSP that don't penalize you for taxes. And you just got to be considered a first-time home buyer, which means you haven't lived in a home for the last 5 years. So you might have had a house 5, 6, 7 years ago, been renting ever since. You want to get back into the market and buy a new home. You've got $10,000 in your RSP, but you have no other savings. Well, let's use that money towards the down payment on your house. Last year in the federal government budget, they increased the amount that you're allowed to withdraw for your RSP to $35,000, tax-free, and you have 15 years to repay it. So think about that flexibility, the control. So it's really, really good program. And I just want to add one other thing on another question that kind of goes along with that. Someone asked, how could they save for their daughter's future, for their education and things. There's a lot of government programs out there that we have access to and we don't know that are there, that our financial advisor can direct you to. So educational savings, as an example, the governments will contribute as high as a 20% grant on any money that you put in. There's no like maximum, or there are maximum, but there's no like a certain amount you have to put in to get to 20%. And there's other benefits as well based on your income. You could actually get more. So there's a lot of programs out there that can help you save for any, education, help you for your down payment for your house. So that's the saving part. But also too, during this time, during COVID-19, I did a lot of research. That was some of the questions too, Jeff, that came back. Some of the answers in the questions is, how do I qualify for these benefits? What are the benefits? Once again, the government website, gov.gc.ca, and the first thing that you click on is help during COVID-19. There's a lot of information there, and there's a lot of frustrations with people because they're like, I don't qualify for this program, I don't qualify for that program, I'm falling between the cracks. But once again, I think if you sit down with a financial advisor who can help navigate, okay, maybe this is the right program because there's student options, there's loss of income options, there's business options, there's literally so many, and they change on a regular basis, right? You probably see it sometimes on the news. But there are a lot of resources to help income, which I think a lot of people need during these challenging times for sure. Okay, a couple of things I would leave everybody with. Have a balance between saving and paying down debt. Obviously, pay your higher interest rate debt down first. If you can, consolidate debt into a lower type of payment, if possible. To extend on the previous conversation on the COVID-19 programs, a lot of the financial institutions allow people to defer mortgage payments for as much as 6 months. So if we're challenged with our income and we still have mortgages to pay, there is help out there with regards to that. Do a budget plan, personalize it to yourself, but continuously revisit. It's like everything else that we do in our life. If we do it and don't review it, it's useless. It has to be an active document that you control and you reward yourself with. Do research on all the accounts that you're doing, whether it's a savings account, checking account, credit cards, loyalty programs. Try to find one that's applicable to you with the lowest fee, lowest interest, best rewards that you possibly can. That's the best I can tell you for now. And whatever I can find, Jeff, I'll share with you.
Yeah, Greg, this is super, super great. Question about credit. Is it helpful to get a credit card even if you don't want to use it to build up that history? How much does that factor into a bank's assessment of you later on?
Yeah, so with a credit card, you're establishing credit history. With a credit history, you're establishing a credit score. Credit score can range anywhere from 300 to 900. So I'm just throwing a bunch of jargon out there for you, but that's for you to understand the background. Do not get a credit card for the sake of getting a credit card thinking you're going to get a credit score. Credit history. History means you've used it, you paid it down. You've used it, you paid it down. So if you want to develop a credit history and a credit score, you need to get that credit card, charge $25 or $50 on it, go home, pay it off right away. So what the bank can see is a history, a pattern of being responsible in your borrowing. So if you have no other, signs of borrowing, this is a great way to build a credit reputation so that when you do go to the bank and you apply for your first mortgage, you feel a little bit more empowered, you feel a little bit more in control, and you don't feel as much agitated because you don't know what things are going to look like. So I do agree. And if this is something that you want to do to develop a credit history, get the one that you don't have an annual fee, because it's not going to charge you a high rate of interest because you're not going to pay interest because you're paying it off right away. Be responsible with any credit you have. so that you can show that, yeah, when I want to borrow more money and bigger money in a mortgage, I've already shown my responsibility with regards to this credit card.
Yeah, so it's not just about getting the card. You got to use it a little bit, and that's what you build up, and that's what helps your credit. Super helpful, super practical, helpful stuff. Greg, super grateful for you taking the time. Really appreciate your time and the energy and the expertise you put into this.
Thank you for this time, guys.
Yeah, really
Appreciate it.
appreciate it, Greg. All right, thanks so much, my man.